I started thinking about an innovation in the school. I thought that might be a safer way to approach it than like identifying a problem, because I'm not a leader in the school. I don't have a leadership position. So like, what could I maybe add rather than like change? And I talked a little bit about it with my group, but the idea that at my school, we focus a lot on student wellness. And I think we can all attest to the fact that we have all experienced a lot of stress in taking care of ourselves, taking care of our families, and taking care of our students and the communities that our students are part of. And so I wanted to do something for wellness for our educators, to provide a resource for them to check in or just feel a sense of camaraderie where we were supposed to be in the assignment. And so I just wanted to get started. And also the readings and the videos by Herminia, right, have been kind of inspiring. And so the little I've made is that I sent out an email to my colleagues just to do Wednesday to see if they wanted to go for a walk during lunch on a Wednesday, exactly as it sounds. And people responded that they were like excited about it, but that they couldn't make it that time. But it just felt like a small step in the right direction of, you know, if this is something I want to do, just gauging interest and just kind of getting started. So it felt good. I got to talk to a new colleague, and I think it was important for her to have an opportunity. She's new, so it was nice for her to kind of connect too. But that's where I'm at. I sort of wanted to meet with administration and just see what we could do for our educators. But I haven't gone so far as to set anything up yet.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be a natural part of your job. It's just a little bit expanding it, which should make it a bit easier to do. How about others?
I'm focused on getting back to more planning and support from within my grade levels and across grade levels between teachers at my school. It was something I was already working on, so I really am doing it. A couple of new things I've done since we started was bringing in an organization who's done one session with my staff, and we'll do one or two more. And just other conversations. Like, I feel that during COVID, some of the things got away from our leadership team, time planning. So we've gone back to some of that. We had a really good session with iReady, for example, last Thursday. So that's what I'm focusing on, and really capitalizing on my grade level chairs to help me kind of support other teachers instead of them always hearing directly from me.
No, that sounds really good. It sounds like something that actually Joanne Culverhouse stressed when she talked to you about communication. You can never do too much.
I, like Rebecca, chose something I was already working on, which is collective efficacy and how that relates to decision-making and the decision-making process. And I couldn't fathom trying to think of something new to do because there's so much already to do. Yeah. And this was a huge undertaking that we took on this year. And so just really focusing first on collective efficacy, because I think that drives the rest of it. And that when you have really strong shared beliefs, decision-making is much easier. And so we've been working on that school-wide, and then with our leadership team even more intimately, and then with my cabinet even more intimately, and working with Ricky Robertson, working with us. He is a author. He actually wrote a book on trauma-informed practice. Yeah, but he and we brought him in really this year to work with our staff. Like Chelsea said, it really resonated with me that we need to first put the oxygen masks on our staff if we're going to save our children. And so we've been working with him all kind of around those areas of shared belief systems, where the power lies. It's all multifaceted, but if I was going to sum it up, I would say, collective efficacy and its relationship to school-wide decision-making.
Does he have a website?
He does, Ricky Robertson.
Yeah,
He
I'll
works
look it up.
Corwin, and he's amazing, you guys. If anybody needs someone to come in and be that outside voice, talking to staff, he is not afraid to say things like it is. He was a special ed teacher and also has a really incredible self story. And we brought him in person before school started, and now he Zooms in monthly with my cabinet team, and then he Zooms in with my staff like every other month. And he's incredible. And we're actually using our COVID funding to continue our relationship for probably 3 to 4 years.
Great. That works. Ideas.
I'm working more of an organizational piece for next school year. And it's going back and creating a homeroom class so that we can do the social emotional curriculum that we're doing this year. So at the end of last school year, I proposed it to staff, but I need to have buy-in in order, or because our union is so strong, I need to have at least 70% of my staff saying we want to do this because it's adding another period to their day. So I started earlier this school year, and I believe we're almost there so that we can add a homeroom period for our next coming school year so that we can do our social emotional program that we're doing now. I met with my school site council today, and just out of, we asked the students who participate or who are members of our school site council what they thought of the program. And just for them to say, it's really worthwhile. This is coming from an 8th grader. It's really worthwhile because
Oh, wow.
we get to have conversation. I mean, it was really powerful. So, just moving in this direction, I think it's going to be good for our students. I mean, I'm almost there, not quite there, but we're getting there.
Is that like an advisory, the homeroom?
Yes, it is.
So
It
one of the participants or speakers, Sarah Shulkin, she did her dissertation on middle school advisories. I can ask her to send it to you if you want.
That would be great. That would be awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. So the 3 of you are working on that together, Elvira and Melanie? No?
No, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, at our school, the district actually, we're implementing Abbott at some of the schools. Our
Mhm.
feeder high school is also implementing that this year. So I'm working on planning for next year. What will our plan be for next year with the Abbott program?
Great.
So I think we've got a good start.
Mhm.
But I really, would like to, I'd really do more planning for the full year. And I've really never done it for a full year, this kind of a big project. So this was something that my principal has me really overseeing it with, of course, her guidance and
Mhm.
always keep her in the loop what's happening. So I'm really excited about it. A large part of it will really be that piece getting ownership from teachers, because we do plan on having it be within about 3 years, right, Carolina, school-wide Abbott.
So are
So
you,
having that consensus building is going to be very important as well.
yeah. Are you also planning for the unexpected?
We always plan for that. We always
Yeah.
plan.
I know. The
All the what
unintended.
ifs. Well, that's what I love so much about working in a team. And of course, I mean, I've only been at the school for 2 years, and both Mel and Carolina were there from the beginning. Mel, not as an administrator, but she was a teacher at the school.
From the beginning of the school?
Yeah, 6 years, right? The school's been around for 6 years. So
Oh.
it's just been really a blessing, really, to have the not coming in with all, new administrators, but have the background
Mhm.
of where to go. So,
Well, you also then know the community,
right.
which helps.
Yeah, that's just really having, again, that team approach in working with students, community teachers. It's been really great. And I think I've learned, working with every community is different. I've been in several schools, and I just understand that, and the dynamic of just going with what's there,
Great.
and learning, always learning. Yeah.
So Melanie, are you doing something different too?
Sorry, I was trying to find my mute button and I'm trying to get the dog to go to bed. I am working on a PBIS reboot. Many of our original team that went through the training has moved on to greener pastures. So I need to retrain some people, get a new group to go through the training and stuff. And, we've done all of the tier 1 stuff, the expectations and the, school-wide expectations and the matrices and whatnot. We just need to kind of breathe new life into it so that, sorry, I'm out of breath.
Take a breath.
My husband's dog does not want to go to bed. I see you. Don't look at me that way. And, get started on the tier 2 work for PBIS.
Good.
Yeah.
Did the talk last time with Trina help at all?
I didn't get I got some ideas. I really need to find a chunk of time to sit down and just think it all through. I'm kind of a linear thinker, and it's hard for me to think about something in depth for 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there.
Yeah.
So,
Long Beach did an amazing job.
yes. Okay. That's
And
a resource I could probably.
Carl Cohn was superintendent when it started. So he's our speaker today.
Oh, great. Great.
Okay. Anyone else? Ideas are fine. Try them out.
I'll share. So Stephanie and I are collaborating on something for our school. We should have announced when you asked for news, Linda, that Stephanie is stepping into a new role next year. I'll let her unmute and share her news because it's her news.
Thank you, Lindsay, for forcing me to share. Because I wouldn't have, but I appreciate that because it's big news. So I'm going to be the upper school director at Sierra Canyon next year. So basically like the high school principal. Again, Lindsay is our 7 through 9 director. So basically our middle school principal. So now we will be teammates. So that's very exciting that it all happened while we were in this group and cohort together. So
That's fabulous.
thank you. Thank you, Lindsay.
Of course. So I'm very excited to have a partner in Stephanie next year. And we've already started planning for next year. And I think, inspired by some of the conversations we've been having here, similar to what other people have been talking about, we sort of like through COVID, I think stopped having as many meetings with our faculty where we could collaborate and really use them as a source of ideas. It's been a lot of virtual meetings and telling people like, let's get through this, let's do this, this is how we're going to do it. So wanting to have more generative ideas. So we don't use the term cabinet, but we were introduced to it through this group and we thought it sounded so elegant and fancy.
It sounds good, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds really good. So we're gonna take that word and we're going to let our faculty know in the spring that we are forming some cabinets and give people some choices about different things that we are working on as a school and could use more of their ideas on. Also as a way to build consensus, obviously, if they're part of the planning, we're hoping that they will be part of the execution. So that's roughly what we're working on. I don't know if that covered it, Stephanie, or if you wanted to add something else.
Oh, that was perfect. Well done.
Lindsay, I'm going to share with you the honest truth. I don't really call my group cabinet. We call ourselves the AFF, which is the Agents of Fabulosity. But I wasn't sure how close we were in this group, if I could share that out, but we put on our calendars AFF meeting, and we just know amongst ourselves that we're the Agents of Fabulosity. And it was just a silly name. We didn't want to be cabinet because that's what school districts do and we're a charter school. So we want to do something different. But I figured I would sound more formal in this meeting and call it the cabinet, but it's really the Agents of Fabulosity.
Well, they both sound really good. So it sounds, Lindsay, like you're in the period of thinking or the period of slow thinking rather than the period of fast thinking. So Jean Hybrex introduced that in the first session, Daniel Kahneman, thinking fast and thinking slow. During the height of the pandemics, you had to think fast. If you had a meeting about it or 2 meetings or 3 meetings, it just wouldn't work. Or if you had a committee, you appointed a committee to work it through, it would take ages to happen. But I guess now you can slow down and think more slowly. Okay, any other ideas?
So my leadership team, kind of similar to what Charmin and Lindsay and Stephanie all are sounding like. We had a vice principal retire. We are not replacing her. And then I've got new members of the leadership team. My leadership team has anywhere from 40 years of experience at the school, no joke,
Wow.
to hired July 1st. Wow. So it's quite a group. And so my first step was in January to have a community building day. And so we did that, but we also have moved our entire school to a very different place in the interim. So on January 18th, we moved 11 classrooms into the space of 5 classrooms. It's a long story, but it's been quite a
move.
Dynamic time at my school. And we also had an unexpected leave. So anyway, my goal is to build the sense of efficacy with my new leadership team along the lines of Charman's comments, but also rebuild that community in a new space significantly.
You can borrow her title for the group.
I know, I should. It's like, oh, we need some fabulosity.
Will that change your job if you don't have an assistant vice principal?
Well, I had 2, and so now I have 1 vice principal and also an administrator who manages the data, which for adult school is its own testings like all the time.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Okay, did we miss anybody? Allison?
So I'm, good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm also doing similar to what Melanie's doing. It's not really a reboot. It's implementing PBIS in the secondary level. So we have tier 1 pretty good at the elementary level, but at intermediate and high school, we don't yet. So I'm looking at creating a district-wide team. So at that way we have K-12 consistency. So I just started the intermediate and high school pieces. So I am currently in the middle of implementing it. But as you know, PBIS takes years. I mean, you have to go through the tiers and then there has to be training. Like we're still in tier 1 with our elementaries. They haven't gotten an evaluation yet. So they're going to have an evaluation this year until we move on to tier 2. So, but it's really focused on the secondary level.
Great.
So it's a work in progress, and I want to do a timeline, hopefully 5 years out. And then at the same time, I'm implementing the secondary teams. I want to build a really strong district-wide team as well. to keep that accountability and sustainability through for years to come.
Great. Timelines are essential. And actually updating them is also essential. Life is a revision sometimes. Anybody else?
I'm going to jump in. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
We are looking at working on PIPs, professional improvement plans. We're not going to implement it now. It's something we're going to kind of slowly roll out, maybe in the summer, maybe next year. Mainly though, to help our teachers kind of improve on their craft or recognize the ones who are really doing an awesome job and hopefully helping them to feel valued and make sure that they feel appreciated for all the hard work they're doing. And then just, again, helping everybody tweak things that need to be tweaked in order to, again, if they're successful, our kids are successful. So it really is about helping everybody improve in a positive way. If we're all kind of part of the support and help and solution, that it's not kind of all on them, and that we're here to kind of provide any training, any help that they feel like they might need to improve themselves as well. So we're trying to do it in a way, again, that's positive school-wide and not punitive. Just something, again, where we're all kind of on the same page and helping our students be successful.
You know, it's hard to all be on the same page. You have to know what people are thinking, and they don't always tell you.
Right. Well, and for our population of kids, because we're teaching kiddos with learning disabilities, we are very specific in how we teach, because we want to have that same synergy and the same verbiage, the same strategies in every single classroom, so that it's consistent. And so just helping everybody get to that kind of level of knowledge is, everybody, again, kind of joins us at different places in their lives too. Right. So we all have to train, and again, we do it with the kind of common theme of helping our kiddos.
Great. Did I miss anybody? Anyone? Okay, Carl Cohn is going to join us in about a minute. And what I want to do actually is take a 2-minute break. I've got to get another pen. Mine just ran out of ink. Anyway, okay, 2 minutes. Hello, Eileen. Hello, Carl.
Hi, Linda. It's so good to see you. Hi, Carl.
Good to see you.
We should catch up.
Yeah, we should. Actually, why don't you introduce yourself to the group? And then I'll have Carl introduce himself.
So hi, everybody. I'm Eileen Strauss. So I am currently teaching the educational leadership program, the doctoral EDD program at UCLA. I teach actually how to change schools, altering the structure and culture of schooling. How do you change schools? And I have, I was a long-term educator at all the levels and just completed 11 years on the state board as the vice president of the State Board of Education, working to improve the system at the state policy level. Anyway, I'm delighted to be here. And I'm actually honored to listen to Carl, who I got to serve with on the State Board of Education.
Great. Carl, would you like to introduce yourself
Sure.
briefly? And then I'll have the group introduce themselves very briefly.
Very good. Carl Cohn, delighted to be back this year. I'm Professor Emeritus at Claremont and a research fellow there. I guess my biggest contributions have been as a K-12 educator, even though I've spent some time in higher ed. I was superintendent of schools in both Long Beach and San Diego, a federal court monitor for the special education consent decree in Los Angeles, member of the State Board of Education, and then launched a new state agency that was part of Governor Brown's return to local control, an agency called the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence. And now, basically, I try to say yes to those things that I'm interested in and no to those things that seem like drudgery. But I think it's a fascinating time to be an educational leader.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's have the group introduce themselves. If you could just your name, where you work, maybe your job title, and then ping pong it over to someone else in your group. Margaret, if you could start.
Hi, I'm Margaret Sheftick. I run a small special education non-public school in Poway. I'll throw it to Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Rubin. I work at Sierra Canyon School in Chatsworth. I'm currently the director of college counseling, but I will be the upper school director for next school year. And I'll throw it to Lindsay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay Koss. I am the 7th through 9th grade director at Sierra Canyon in Chatsworth, California. And I am going to throw it to Charmin.
I'm Charmin Evans. I'm the executive director at University Preparation Charter School with Cal State Channel Islands. We're a preschool through 8th grade laboratory school for Cal State Channel Islands. And I am going to pitch it over to Allison.
Hi, good evening. I'm Allison Garland. I'm an assistant superintendent of student services in Montebello. Okay, I'm going to send it over to Lori.
Thank you. I'm Lori Reel. I'm the principal of Fremont Union High School District Adult School in Sunnyvale and Cupertino. And I will hand it over to Carolina.
Hi, I'm Carolina Moreno. I'm principal of Creekside Junior High School in Los Baños. I'm gonna send it over to Gabby.
Hi, I'm Gabby Rivas Lopez. I am principal at Ramona Junior High in Chino, California.
Gabby, are you going to send it on?
Sorry, I realized I muted myself when I did that. To Bailey, please.
Okay.
Good evening. My name's Bailey Kwan. I work at a non-public private special ed school in Poway, California. And I am currently the assistant director. And I will send it to Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie Donahue. I work with Bailey and Margaret at a small non-public school in Poway. I'm a team leader and a test site coordinator. Oh, I forgot to pass it on to Rebecca. Did you go yet?
No.
I did not. Hello, good evening. My name is Rebecca Harris. I'm principal of Dickinson Elementary in Compton Unified School District. And I'm going to pass it on to, Deborah, have you gone yet?
I haven't.
I didn't think so.
Thank you. I'm Deborah Bouvet. I'm the principal of Briggs K-8 school in Chino Valley.
Great.
And I will pass it on to Chelsea.
Hello, I'm Chelsea. I'm a wellness educator at Geffen Academy at UCLA. It's a public-private independent school on UCLA's campus.
Melanie, have you gone?
And we popcorn it to anyone who hasn't gone. Can you give me a hand up? Okay, I'll popcorn it back to, oh no, Melanie, go for it.
Hi, I'm Melanie Martinez. I'm assistant principal at Creekside Junior High in Los Baños, lovely Central California. And I will hand it to Elvira.
You're muted.
It can't be that hard to unmute this. I'm Elvira Gutzweiler, assistant principal at Creekside Junior High School in Las Vegas.
Great. Have we missed anybody? Okay, Carl, it's all yours.
Great. Okay. I really liked this title, The New Normal, Combating Racism in a Time of Crises in Parent, School Board, Superintendent Relationships. And I've been testing this discussion with some superintendent groups. First, the California Ed Partners Group last fall down in La Jolla, and then last week with the Aspen Institute Urban Superintendents Network. So this is designed to sort of provoke some conversation that might go against the conventional wisdom. So Heidi, let's move to the next slide. When we talk about parent concerns, you have really interesting developments. So we're all aware of the recall of the San Francisco school board members last week. We also, what's interesting about that, some people sit back and say, well, that was San Francisco and they're a little whatever. If the current voucher proposal circulating for signatures in California, if it qualifies for the ballot, you're basically going to have a statewide referendum and reckoning on the performance of both school superintendents and local boards of education. So the fact that you're not in San Francisco doesn't mean that you may not be facing a huge reckoning. And obviously a lot of this is coming from parents. Parents who are upset, among other things, with the fact that California schools stayed closed longer than the schools in any other state in the country. So depending on what your perspective is as a parent, some parents are concerned about whether or not in this political climate, equity is going to be abandoned. There are some other parents out there who are obsessed with critical race theory and what they think that term means. Again, some parents concerned about too much time being spent on so-called political indoctrination versus the basics and other things. And then there are other parents who believe that racism in America is a crisis and that it isn't being addressed. And a lot of this grows out of the murder of George Floyd and a whole other number of things that have come with that. One of the fundamental questions being asked by parents on one side of the issue is, are today's kids responsible for the sins of the past? And then the issue that we should all enthusiastically support, school as a safe place for all kids. And so you get this mix of opinion, but what we see in our politics is some are using that very cleverly to win political office. Terry McAuliffe was a veteran Democratic governor in Virginia. Glenn Youngkin, a complete rookie with regard to electoral politics. In the final 2 weeks of the Virginia governor's race, Glenn Youngkin, who won, made up 15 points by focusing exclusively on K-12 school issues. No one in politics would have predicted that you could do that with the economy, all the other things that are the focus of races like that. But you had ads, political ads, where a little white girl, first grader, 6 years old, comes home and says, "Mommy, are we evil because we're white?" That kind of highly charged political advertising should give us all pause. Now, when I was a student getting a doctoral degree at UCLA, I took every course that focused on the politics of education. This was a long time ago. I was focused that at UCLA, I was going to get everything that I needed to know about the politics of education. And one of the things I learned was that when it comes to politics, there is, and especially parents, there is pluralist politics, benefits for the many, or the other side of that is redistributive politics, benefits for the few. If parents become convinced under redistributive politics that you are going to take from my child and give to someone else's child, I'm your enemy and I want to take you out. So the framing of all of this becomes incredibly important as we try to do the right thing. And so before we move on to the next slide, any comment or question that anyone wants to raise right now before we move to the next slide? Okay, Heidi. School boards. I taught a course in a doctoral program for CSU San Bernardino last fall. It's called Ed Policy and Governance. For me, I'm like a kid in the candy store when I teach that course. So with school board politics, you have this fear of culture warriors taking over. And what we're doing right now is trying to define which places are more likely to have this phenomenon. And the preliminary analysis is that it's more likely in those places that are suburban or rural in terms of demographics rather than urban. So one of the things I do in my class, I give my students the assignment that they have to go and visit a local school board meeting and then write up an analysis of what they saw. So I decided, this is like tasting your own cooking. I decided, you know what? You're hearing a lot in the news about school board meetings. So you're asking your students to get out there. You probably should go to a local school board meeting and see for yourself what's going on. So I did. I live most of the year here in Palm Springs. So in what we call the Coachella Valley, there are 3 unified school districts: Palm Springs Unified, Desert Sands Unified, and then Coachella Valley Unified, which is in the eastern part of the desert. So I had been reading in the newspaper about Desert Sands. So of the 3 school districts out here, Desert Sands is the more suburban, more upscale of the 3 districts. So I went to the Desert Sands school board meeting. And, you know, whenever I go into a room, it's a habit I have, especially if it's a room that's filled with people. I always look at what the security is like and where the exits are. And so that's what I did, overflowing crowd with another crowd in an overflow room. And there were 8 security people there, 4 from the Desert Sands School District and 4 Riverside County sheriffs. The security personnel from the school district had their masks on. The Riverside County sheriffs were not wearing masks. And this was on the very same day that it was announced that the elected Riverside County sheriff had been a dues-paying member of the Proud Boys. So that was the atmosphere and the climate as I sat down to observe this school board meeting. First speaker up goes to the microphone and says, I did a public records request with regard to you school board members. And I found out that 2 of you went on an education study tour of China several years ago. It's clear that you're in league with the Chinese Communist Party. So that was the opening of the meeting. Next speaker up is a 16-year-old high school student. And he tells the school board, I want you to know my teacher cursed me out for wearing a Trump t-shirt to class. And then he says, turns to the crowd and he says, and he forces us to watch CNN in the classroom. And the audience goes, yeah, yeah. This was the atmosphere for 2 hours. The board members and the superintendent were accused of every manner of malfeasance. 2 weeks after I visited that school board meeting, the superintendent announced that with the impending birth of his first grandchild this spring, he would be retiring at the end of June. So you have a situation where they are now searching for a new superintendent. Their school board meetings are video archived. And so any prospective candidate who wants to take a look at that can see, is this the community that I want to lead? So in my conversations with superintendents, I'm asking them, do you know who your high propensity voters are in school board elections? How can you predict who's coming out to vote and to what extent your community is ripe for this kind of culture warrior takeover? I think it's time for all of us in leadership roles. You know, I got into this because I wanted to be a good high school counselor. And so my listening skills have always held me in good stead. But figuring out what kind of new listening strategies do we need as an organization becomes incredibly important right now. The other issue that local school districts are faced with is pressure to abandon COVID safety protocols. And that, I would argue, and this is a sort of a biased point of view, that Governor Newsom hasn't been very helpful to local school districts by his actions, because he seems to do things that basically end up throwing the ball back to the local level. So on February 28th, you'll probably see the lifting of the statewide mask mandate, but most of the superintendents that I talk to don't find that very helpful, because they know there will be a drumbeat at the local level and people will be standing there saying there is no longer a statewide mask mandate. Why are you holding on to this? And the reason is obvious: the disparate impact of the pandemic on communities. So a year ago, I wrote this infamous piece for EdSource arguing that the governor should temporarily abandon local collective bargaining, sit down with the unions, and negotiate statewide a reopening. And because I wrote that piece, I was adopted by all kinds of interesting groups, including the Bay Area women who are behind first reopen California schools, and secondly, they've morphed to a new name called California Parent Power. And I had an exchange with one of them this week, and she was arguing that, CTA is, out of step with unions across the country, and CTA is completely responsible for this disaster, that type of thing. And what I said to her, I have been volunteering in a first grade classroom at Colin Powell School on the North Long Beach Compton border for more than 20 years. And the teacher that I work with there, in my judgment, she is a hero. She has 22 kids, 2 of them are fully vaccinated in a community where transmission of the virus is still high. So while she's not a card-carrying union teacher, she appreciates CTA's efforts to keep her safe so that she can be there every day for the kids that she is in fact dedicated to serve. The other phenomena that we're seeing in school board politics is people wanting mandates with regard to how race can be taught in schools. And so you have, that probably won't happen in California, but Texas and Florida and a whole bunch of other places are heavy into mandating what can be taught with regard to race in schools. You've got banning of books. You've got places that are considering lesson videos of teachers' lessons, constant surveillance, all of those kinds of things that have a chilling effect on what could go on in classrooms. So we're at an extraordinary point in terms of school board politics, and we see some communities across the country. There's one in Douglas County, Colorado, that as soon as they got that 3rd vote on the school board, they dismissed the so-called pro-equity superintendent of schools. So when you do that, who are you now looking for as your next superintendent? Someone who wants to come in and appease the culture warriors to the detriment of what should be a sound education for all. So school board politics is absolutely front and center, and it needs not only a clear airing of issues, but it also needs a whole lot of research. Again, with regard to high propensity voters, which communities are more susceptible to this emerging culture warrior phenomena that we're facing. Questions or comments before we move to the next slide? Okay, Heidi. Superintendents, I've never seen a situation where there are so many personal safety fears. And you know, all of us who've been superintendents, you've been in dicey, tricky situations, but this current situation really is different. In the piece that I did for AASA School Administrator magazine, and they entitled An Impossible Position, I tried to capture some of that. I mean, it's an extraordinary situation when you have the wife and the daughter of a superintendent showing up at a board meeting with signs about the abuse the father and husband are taking. The good news is, after writing that piece for AASA, 2 foundations, I didn't solicit them, they reached out to me and said, we want to give you some money to convene a national meeting to talk about the issues that you raised in that piece. So that's one of the things that I'm working on right now. This issue of losing the support of your board is absolutely a critical one. Superintendents cannot survive without the support of their boards of education. The issue of burnout, mental health, I don't know if you all heard this, but Daniel Domenech, the executive director of AASA, on NPR about a month ago, actually talked about superintendents that he has talked to who have raised the issue of suicide. So we're talking about stresses that are bigger than anything we've ever seen. And I am not in any way talking about this to discourage you from becoming a superintendent. The truth is, as I point out in the piece, we're going to need an entire new cadre of people to take the plunge in terms of becoming superintendents. Don't know if you've seen it. One of the really interesting pieces was done by a group called the National Superintendents Roundtable. They did a research brief entitled Superintendents Struggle During the Pandemic. Panic attacks, strokes, and threats of violence meet prayer, exercise, meditation, and booze. So there is an extraordinary focus right now, and I'm not confining this to superintendents. I think school principals, I think classroom teachers, the number of people going out the door and saying, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to walk away from something that I love. This is a crisis that we need to have a serious conversation about. The other thing that's out there under superintendents that is absolutely critical, and I would argue unacceptable, this notion that public school districts have become public health departments is just not sustainable. All the superintendents of Santa Clara County, California, wrote a letter to Governor Newsom and the leaders of the state legislature, basically saying what I just said. We have abandoned the primary mission of teaching and learning in favor of all of the things that a public health department ought to be doing. And in their letter, they gave the governor and the legislative leaders concrete examples An assistant principal who used to spend 60% of her time in classrooms focused on instruction now spends 75% of her time supervising contact tracing and testing. This is completely unsustainable. The other thing is the safety, the emerging safety concerns. I have a daughter-in-law. Really? I have a daughter-in-law who is an assistant principal at Long Beach Wilson High School, school of 3,000 plus students. 2 Fridays ago, 50 teachers called in sick. When you have unsupervised teenagers in a high school setting, you have fundamentally compromised safety. So we're at an extraordinary point where we really have to push back and start talking about, we can't sustain this. Okay, Heidi, let's see, let's get to that last slide. So what I'm really pressing superintendents on, when it comes to combating racism, equity, would it be a good idea, and this is provocative, would it be a good idea to have less talk and more focused actions? Because the more you talk, the more people are going to target you. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. When I was a superintendent in Long Beach, we decided that we were going to make a major effort on early literacy. Any youngster not reading at grade level at the end of 3rd grade was going to get 6 weeks of summer enrichment. Now, the research office at Long Beach Unified was populated with people who had come from UCLA's CRESS Center. So I went to my assistant superintendent research, Lynn Winters, and I said, Lynn, if we do this 6 weeks literacy enrichment for everybody who isn't reading at grade level at the end of 3rd grade, what will the composition of this summer cohort be? And she said, I'll guarantee you it will be 75, 80% males of color. She was absolutely right. Now, what's important about that is our doing that. Didn't need a board resolution. Didn't call it Carl Cohn's equity agenda. Just quietly did it without any attention. And so what I'm saying to superintendents is we need a behind the closed door discussion about do we have to have everything attached to us? When I was a beginning superintendent, and most people don't know, I studied to be a priest before I got into education, just like Governor Brown. And a school board member early on said to me, you know, you're not morally superior to everybody else. And I thought, you know what, that's pretty good advice. So equity is important. Closing gaps is important. But what if we do it without a lot of fanfare, without a lot of, hey, look at me. This is Carl Cohn's equity agenda. And we're going to adopt a board resolution on equity, just go ahead and do it. And bring a laser-like focus on programs that benefit underserved students. The other thing we need to do a better job of, engaging families. What are those listening skills? I would argue, and I tried as superintendent in both Long Beach and San Diego. When I was selected in Long Beach, I was the first superintendent of color in the 110-year history of the district. But in both Long Beach and San Diego, I wanted to keep as many white students in the school district as I could, while working very, very closely on the issue of a laser-like focus on those who historically had been underserved. So this one board member calling me out, what I call abandonment of morally superior posturing, I see that as really important. And then what are we doing? New strategies with regard to listening to the community and creating a new kind of vision that keeps everyone in the fold. The bottom line with this voucher initiative that's out there, signature gathering, if it makes the ballot, this could be game over for traditional public schools. This initiative is offering parents $14,000 per child to spend at any public, private, parochial, or charter school in California. And you talk about exacerbating inequity. If you already have a lot of money, if you're a millionaire or a billionaire and you don't need that money right now for your child's education, you get to put it in an equity-bearing account so that when your child gets in to an Ivy League institution, that hundreds of thousands of dollars that is built up in your account, you can use that to pay your Ivy League tuition. So that's what's out there. That's what's circulating. And so we have to face the reality that this reckoning, this referendum, and what I call sort of a recall with regard to leaders statewide, that's potentially in the offing. So having said that, though, I think it's really important. We're gonna need really smart new people to look at the superintendency. And so I hope I have not scared you away this evening. I hope you'll think about this is an incredibly important time. It's a tremendous time of opportunity. Most of the, one of the things that's a bit disturbing, and this speaks to your Women in School Leadership Academy, there's some data emerging that while women were making progress, the pandemic has actually reversed that, and that more men are in fact being selected. So we need to think about that. And the reason I say that is because most of the women that I know in the superintendency The truth is they were much stronger than some of the men that I know. And I was on a Zoom with one of them. Her name's Jen Cheatham. She's on the faculty at Harvard now, and she was superintendent of schools in Madison, Wisconsin. She can, in addition to doing all of the things that are necessary for handling the politics of the board, that type of thing, she can actually stand in the well and deliver high quality professional development to both teachers and school principals. Most of the male superintendents that I know, starting with myself, cannot do that. And so women often bring superior skills to the job. I don't know if some of you know Christy Barrett out in Hemet, California. There's a bunch of emerging stars out there, strong instructional leaders who are also doing a good job of navigating the politics of the community and the school board. So think about that, and I hope I haven't had a chilling effect on your aspirations, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
Dr. Cohn, hi, I'm Gabby. I just wanted to say thank you for what you shared today. It just feels so right on the money. I felt like you were probably describing our school board meetings that we've recently been having, and it definitely.
Are you in Poway?
No, we're in Chino. I'm in Chino Valley.
Chino Valley, okay, all right.
And I think I didn't see it, but I think our school board meeting made the news last week. But it sounds very, very familiar, and yeah, it's some interesting times coming our way, and I just appreciate hearing you talk. And there's definitely so much more I need to learn, other than my little corner of the world as principal. So,
well, like I said, you know, strong instructional leaders who can also navigate the politics. That's what we're going to need. Yeah.
One of the things I heard you say really resonated with me was you talked about the importance to be quiet, or to not have to take the glory or make the big show about something. And then you talked about the importance of communication. And I think those two things are a really tricky balance. And I've seen some of my colleagues in the charter world in Ventura County not balance that well through the pandemic. Either sometimes over communicating can be your curse, over asking for input can be your curse. Sure. And knowing when to just step back and make the decisions. And so that just resonated with kind of the things that have happened recently, and trying to find that balance and that ability to sit back and be quiet sometimes and not have to say something.
Yeah, and long before the pandemic, you know, we came to this agreement in Long Beach, excuse me, as long as we were doing good things, the school board could get the credit, the community could get the credit. You know, I started in 92. In 96, President Bill Clinton called us out in the State of the Union for taking a strong stand on student dress. And he came to Long Beach, and, you know, Clinton's a master of politics, right? He looked at that audience of thousands of people there at Jackie Robinson's school in Long Beach, and he said, you, the parents, you took the first step to remind the nation that public school kids could do, you know, and it was brilliant in the sense of he was letting parents take the credit for that rather than, you know, he said some nice things about me, but it wasn't like, you know, you've got this, you know, really great superintendent here. It was about, you know, that audience of people that is so critical to public education. You know, serving on the state board with Eileen Strauss was a real treat. I didn't quite know what to expect in going to the state board. School board meetings in Long Beach last about an hour. And so for me, adjusting to a 2-day meeting was just an extraordinary experience. Eileen was just a great leader on the state board, and I admire the fact that she stayed much longer than I did and has finally left the board, but just a great contributor and a great leader on the board. So however she's involved at UCLA, you all are lucky to have her there.
I will say Carl had wise advice on the board about being very thoughtful about when you made comments, and that people listened to you when you made clear and succinct comments, but not when you talked for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. And he was very wise about that. I just would say that.
I'll never forget our first meeting. The state was taking over some district, maybe Alisal or something. And a gentleman, a Spanish-speaking gentleman, you know, and this is my first meeting, right? He comes to the podium and he says, "You all are worse than Mexican dictators." And I thought, okay, you've been an urban superintendent a long time. No one has ever accused you of being worse than a Mexican dictator. So you're now in rarefied atmosphere.
One other comment that I'll have Carl share is about the role of mentors. I know Linda has that and very much connected in the Women's School Leadership Academy. And Carl is a wise mentor to many women that are moving up in the system to become assistant superintendents and superintendents. So I think Carl, it'd be really helpful to talk about how do you find good mentors? How do you get that support? Because I think that has been incredible. Also, who you work for really matters. I think
Right.
Carl could be wise in sharing that.
One of the things it's important to take stock of, what are your skills? So I was selected superintendent during the height of the Rodney King riots. I wasn't selected because I had a track record as an outstanding instructional leader. I was selected because that school board felt that if social chaos was going to be the order of the day, I was the person most likely to work with parents, community, law enforcement, and others to restore order. So going in, I knew what I didn't know. And what it did, it motivated me to look for talent. Talent that I didn't have. And so focusing on where can I get the type of instructional leadership and help that we're going to need to really move the needle on student performance. And, you know, sometimes people, you know, it's not like, you know, someone laid hands on you and all of a sudden, you know, you stood up and you had all these magical powers. it's really important for people to know what their skill set is. And I have found consistently that when it comes to moving the needle on student performance, women generally know a whole lot more about how to do that than men do. There are some exceptions, the late Tom Payson, who was superintendent in San Diego and Boston, and so, but in the main, lots of outstanding, incredibly talented women who know the basics. And what we're seeing now, I mean, just the sheer number of people, January and February are historically the months when superintendents announce, I'm going out the door at the end of June, and we've seen a record number. What's most disturbing, last week, I heard from 2 California superintendents, one a man, the other a woman, both in their 40s, saying, I'm going out the door on June 30. One of them's public, and that's the Berkeley superintendent, Brent Stevens. The other hasn't announced it yet, but she reached out to me to let me know. But when I see that, that is very disturbing. We do not have the pool of available talent if people in their 40s are going out the door and saying, I've seen enough.
Wow.
Dr. Cohen,
Mm-hmm.
it just seems like there's so many uncontrollable variables that how do you know if you have the talent? Like there's just so many, there's so much going on in education today. And I have to agree with what Gabby said. As you were talking during the first 10 minutes, you had me hooked because everything you talked about is what I see happening. It's disheartening. Like it is so disheartening to see what's happening with these parent groups and parents screaming and personally attacking board members. It's I'm not kidding, it hurt my heart like last week. Like it hurt to go. Our board meetings are on Friday, and it's like these people don't deserve that.
Oh, yeah. So I think one of the arguments that I made with the Aspen Institute Urban Superintendents Group is that this is a crisis. A crisis presents an opportunity. And so I'm arguing that everyone, no matter what their responsibility is, should go bold. And when I became superintendent in Long Beach, we were facing a crisis. McDonnell Douglas, that employed 40,000 people, was leaving. United States Navy had announced they were leaving Long Beach. A complete economic collapse. The New York Times had sent its award-winning war correspondent to cover the gang war between Latinos and Cambodians in Long Beach, a real shooter's war. And what I did is we went bold. And then the other thing we were facing was the 1993 voucher initiative. So we decided rather than just surviving, go bold. Use this crisis to go bold. And so we did all kinds of things that the conventional wisdom had said, you can't do that in the public schools. We did, and we boiled it down to a very simple slogan. And one of the problems in communication, right? We're having a tough time reducing things to kitchen table talk. But when the Long Beach board stood up and said, we are going to be about the following slogan, everybody got it. Long Beach Unified, high standards, dress, behavior, and achievement. Wasn't anything highfalutin about it. We're going to do that. And whatever supports that, we're going to try it. You know, a group of parents said, if you want single gender education, why do we have to go to private school for that? And you know what we said? You don't. We have, and sometimes people come after you. You know, we were defended pro bono by a prestigious law firm. You can have single gender in a California public school as long as you do the same thing for young men as you do for young women. You can require school uniforms. You can do all kinds of things that the conventional wisdom at the time said you can't do that. After President Clinton visited Long Beach, I'll never forget, someone wrote a letter to the editor of the Long Beach Press Telegram. Dear editor, everybody thinks Carl Cohn is bold and innovative. I beg to differ. All he's giving us is a 1950s parochial school education, and we could have paid a nun a whole lot less than we're paying him. And I thought, you know what, that's a pretty good letter. And that's why a year ago, what's a sacred cow in California, the bluest of blue states? You can't mess with CTA, right? That's kind of a sacred cow. So my argument in the EdSource commentary to Governor Newsom was, go bold. This is the bluest of blue states. Guess what? You have, under your emergency authority, you can temporarily suspend collective bargaining. If you really want to get schools open faster, sit down with the state leadership, craft a bargain, and get schools open sooner. So I'm arguing that when you're in this kind of a crisis, going bold gives you an opportunity to sort of challenge the conventional wisdom about what's possible in public schools. So that's kind of my argument of why it's important to take a look at this today. The politics is much more difficult. It's much more tricky. But what I'm saying to school boards, and we're working out, I'm going to be working, some of you may know Cheryl Hildreth, former LA Unified person who's the superintendent up in Washington Unified in West Sacramento. Going to be working with her and her board this weekend. And part of the conversation is how can you use this crisis to really make a difference? Is it just, you know, incremental change, or is it a bold statement about Washington Unified and West Sacramento 2, 3, 4 years from now outperforming similarly situated districts, much to the surprise and consternation of everybody else? Now, the progress in Long Beach, I mean, we won the Broad Prize, but that was after 10 years. And so one of the things that I don't ever try to do is, this is a long, hard slog. You know, it's not something where someone, a glib interviewee, can come in and tell you, I can turn this around in a couple years, because there is no place in the country where that happened. There was a time when Atlanta looked like it had done dramatic things in a short amount of time, but once you got below the surface, what did we find? We found massive cheating on just an unbelievable scale. And so anybody coming in and saying, I can do this quickly, don't believe it. It's a long, hard slog.
Carl, I want to thank you. This has been tremendous. And I hope that the group will be able to discuss with each other what you've talked about a little bit later tonight.
Right.
I want to thank you, and I'm sure everybody else does also. And Eileen, thanks for joining us. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks. Good luck, all of you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay, let's take a 15-minute break and then come back and we'll go into mentor circles.